Texas Tech did that.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest and craziest sport on planet Earth. 3 places Jake Retzlaff could go in the transfer portal, and my Big Ten preseason power rankings are all on today's show. Brian Smith, longtime recruiting analyst, host of the Portal Podcast, is here because we begin, Brian, with the Texas Tech Red Raiders, who went out there and did the thing. And you know what? I'm not a Red Raiders fan specifically. I've been to Lubbock. I liked it there. I had a good time. Great golf course there next to the university. But I'm gleeful today because all offseason, some people, me, have been singing Texas Tech's praises and have been saying, wow, this is a landmark level of commitment to football and winning and investing with actual dollars, which is what you need nowadays. And what do you know? Felix Ojo, a 5-star offensive tackle who might have otherwise gone to Texas, is not going to Texas A&M. He's going to Texas Tech. Your reaction to this situation, which I didn't make a prediction here on Ojo. I didn't say Texas Tech is going to go get him. Just when I saw the news, I was less surprised than most people because my reaction is, yeah, this is what happens when you care, when you invest. I think the Red Raiders are being rewarded for that.
If you're going to play the game, you've got to play it well. And they've got Cody Campbell that has billions of dollars and wants to support his program. So I'm down with it. Now, there's a long way to go with this. I don't know how much everybody knows the August 1st date coming up with all the NIL deals getting approved and not approved. That's a whole nother thing. But if you're not in the game, those NIL deals don't matter. Texas Tech is going to make sure they get their name in the hat. And by the way, in my life, I don't know of more than a couple times that Tech has ever beat like Texas for a guy they really wanted, like somebody Texas pressed for. They just don't lose those battles to the Red Raiders. I think it's kind of cool too. That's just my opinion on it, and good for them. So I don't know how many more they're going to win, but they're in on a lot of these kids still with decisions to go. And I've been told 27, that class, there's a better chance even with that group than the current class.
Yeah, one of the top prospects in the class of 2027 reportedly considering Texas Tech as well. This is great if you're a Texas Tech fan. It's also good if you're a Big 12 fan because, you and I have talked about this before, Brian. 5-stars don't typically go to the Big 12. That's shifting. I don't know how many data points we need. There are only about 35 stars or so in a given class. And right now, you've got 3 of them scheduled to go to the Big 12 in the 2026 cycle. That's noteworthy. That's making a dent. That's making progress, gaining traction, however you want to phrase it, into catching up with the rest of the conferences that everybody views them at a talent deficit with. And do I think that's overblown? I mean, maybe we saw Arizona State go toe-to-toe with Texas. On paper, that never should have happened, but you give yourself a better chance year in, year out to win big games, to go toe-to-toe with the big kids in the SEC and the Big Ten, to get back to the national championship game. These are the sorts of things. This is where it starts. This isn't where it ends, but this is where it starts.
Like Keyshawn Henderson, for people that don't know, the kid that's from the Houston area that plans on going to Houston.
Yep.
That's not a normal football player. I've been blessed to see him play like 3 times. He's going to go in and probably take somebody's job. He would do the same thing at a lot of SEC schools. That's really cool, man. Good for Houston. Good for a lot of these. Obviously, BYU is getting a 5-star court. There's a lot of stuff like that. But when was the last time the Big 12 got 3 5-stars? Has it? Yeah.
You probably had. It definitely has not happened, to my knowledge, since Texas and Oklahoma left.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, that was the death knell to the recruiting world for Big 12. Because those were the 2 schools that got them. It was really like the Big 10 plus 2 is what that was. Like, those plus 2 were the ones that were the best programs in that league by a landslide, talent-wise, and they could get those kids, Oklahoma and Texas. now that they're in the SEC. Oh, look, BYU, Houston, Texas Tech. It's really fun, man. Like I never thought as a recruiting analyst I'd be saying that. If you'd have told me 2 years ago Houston had a 5-star quarterback committed, I'd have said drugs are bad, seek help.
Yeah, it's the world we've got, and Ryder Lyons going to BYU. I know there's an LDS connection there, but man, still. USC and Oregon were after that. Ordinarily, stereotypically, these are the sorts of players who, they're going to give them a chance. They're in the final two, but they end up going elsewhere. I don't care what the connection or reason is. This is really, really good news if you're a Big 12 fan. And Ojo, of course, a phenomenal offensive tackle prospect. There's, reports about plenty of money being thrown his way, which I don't actually see as a bad thing from the school's standpoint. Like, oh my gosh, they care. They want to win. Wow. Like, I'm supposed to pretend that's a bad thing? Okay. But the other thing I wanted to get to, Brian, you mentioned it earlier, this August 1st deadline. Help people understand what that means and why that could be exciting here in about 3 weeks' time.
It's a lot of lawyer stuff, but there's a NIL, if you will, clearinghouse that has a program that's called NIL Go. It's such an exciting term, where it's just software. They plug in the deal and it says whether it's worthy or not, meaning like, did this player get the amount they're worth or less? They go over, they can flag it. Now, before anybody asks, yes, it's inevitable. There will be a bazillion lawsuits. That's coming. But the other part of this, and this is where it gets really complex, the $20.5 million that the House settlement brings out, if the deals are deemed to be inside that or outside of that with the outside booster collectives, do they count towards it or not? Schools have looked at this differently. Auburn, the way they view it compared to Tech, is a million miles apart. So there's got to be some clarity here very soon. We'll see what happens. But if they try to go against the collectives being able to be separate, that's more lawsuits. So we're going to have plenty to talk about, Spencer. We're just getting started with the Warriors. It's a good time.
Because what has remained undefeated since that fateful day in July of 2022 when USC and UCLA announced they're leaving the Pac-12. I remember down to the square foot in my apartment at the time where I was standing when I read that news, and my first reaction was, oh, I got to go do a podcast right now. And I just kept going and for like 5 hours. I went on other shows, I did bonus shows and all that stuff. Ever since then, billable hours have been the biggest winner of all the. You could talk about the Big Ten media deal, the SEC. I don't care, man. Across the board, billable hours are so undefeated in this new world. And look, I understand why the NIL Go Commission exists. I think the intention behind it to level the playing field a bit is good. Legally, I haven't seen a single court ruling, Brian, that a judge will point to and cite the precedent of to say, this is how we can cap the earning potential of legal adults. That's my amateur lawyer's cap going on there. I have no idea. That's just my gut feeling.
It's called capitalism. That's still what our country is.
Yes.
So I 100% agree. They're going to get sued into oblivion. And with Congress involved, and let's be honest, they get voted on to keep their jobs. When they try to cap young people, it usually doesn't go very well, especially like the first time one of these little young gymnasts, when she gets her deal reduced, that'll go over like a lead balloon. Good luck with that.
Boy. Yeah.
So, but anyway,
because those deals are worth a lot. Like I know. Like everybody listening to watching the show out there, college football players can make plenty. Do not for one single second think they're the only well-compensated athletes on certain campuses, not every campus, but at the high end, there's some valuable deals out there. So plenty to discuss. As always, Brian Smith, recruiting analyst, host of the Portal podcast here at the Locked On Network. I've got to change that background over there because I made a little typo. I'm going in the Jake Retzlaff direction because he's just going to be available, or so we think. First, this episode brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to the ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it all possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the first pitch, and they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. I've used Game Time multiple times myself, and the process is great. You have everything you need in one ticketing app, and the process goes nice and smoothly. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I have seen some truly ridiculous teams thrown out there as Jake Retzlaff could wind up here. Okay. I'll start with where I do think he could wind up. Number one, Tennessee. Now, this is all presuming, of course, that Retzlaff is able to get into the new transfer portal window, get a waiver. Okay, let's say for the sake of argument that he does, because we're in the pro player era of college sports. This guy is no longer at BYU, didn't want to sit out half the season because of violating the honor code. Okay, let's say he transfers. Tennessee would make sense. This is a quarterback room that was surprisingly and very suddenly void of Nico Iamaleava. They complete the quarterback swap with Joey Aguilar coming from UCLA, priorly at Appalachian State. I think UCLA should have sent over a couple of first-round picks or maybe mid-round picks just to compensate for the upside that Nico hits his 5-star potential one day, but that's a different conversation. Tennessee, to me, would make sense. Now, any school, this is a conversation for any school to have when considering going out and getting Jake Retzlaff. Are you willing to deal with the perception, whether you think it's fair or not? I have no idea what happened behind the scenes with the legal case. I'm not diving into that. The bottom line with Jake Retzlaff is he just won 10 games with a BYU program, 11 with the bowl game. He just won 10 games with a program that doesn't win double-digit games every single year. And was he a Heisman Trophy favorite? No. Was he the best quarterback in his conference? No. Was he good enough to win football games? You're darn right. And guess what? BYU pulled some magic out of their rear ends. They pulled some rabbits out of the hat last year to win games. You can't do that if your quarterback isn't a gamer. However, there is an off-field distraction. You can't get away from that. So any school that wants to go at him has to be okay with the fact that certain people are going to see it this way, whether you think that's right or wrong, that some people are not really going to like it, that does that shift the perception of our program? You have to be willing to overlook that. And whenever that comes into play in the sports world, what I always ask myself is, does the talent make it worth it? Retzlaff's numbers last year were not overly spectacular. 20 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, just under 3,000 yards, 58% completion. I mean, he wasn't lighting the world on fire, but he was clearly good and is capable of being a Power 4 starting quarterback. We know that. That's why he would make sense at Tennessee. Aguilar has never started a game in the Power 4. Now, Appalachian State plays in the Sun Belt, good, solid, competitive league. You feel like, okay, perhaps that's a situation that he can come in and thrive with. Josh Heupel's got a good track record with quarterbacks over the last several years with the Vols. Okay, I can see it. If you're wanting someone who's more proven, yeah, Retzlaff could be the answer. So I could see it. Do I suspect they go in that direction? I really don't. Even though it would make sense, I don't think they're going to go there. Because if you remember, if you go back to that wonderful stretch of shows that I did here on the show in April, in which I discussed the Nico situation and all the drama that came with it, one thing that I addressed was Josh Heupel's comments and how he came out and said the right things and said what's good for college football, which is, hey, we're going to support this kid's right to go. I don't wish him any ill will. No one's bigger than the Power T. Keeping it about Tennessee, about the Vols, about the program, about the institution. that had to endear him to a lot of fans. Does he want to bring in someone that could possibly alienate some of those fans? Does he want to take that sort of risk? I don't think that he does. I don't think that Retzlaff's talent for Tennessee is worth a potential off-field distraction. Another team I've seen thrown out there is Maryland. I suppose, sure, they lost Billy Edwards Jr. to Wisconsin in the transfer portal. Their program feels like they're kind of in limbo. Mike Loxley could be one of the first Big Ten coaches fired in the next year or two. Yeah, if you don't feel like you have a great guy in the room, okay, sure, that's feasible. I think it's most likely, and I don't have just one school in mind for the third option. I think it's most likely that Retzlaff winds up at a Group of 5 school somewhere because his talent is clear. We saw that last year. He's got a better arm than I and many others gave him credit for. He outperformed my expectations. He outperformed a lot of people's expectations, maybe even some within the BYU fan base. If you sent him to, and this is not a direct suggestion because, of course, they have their quarterback with Maddox Madsen, but Retzlaff at the Power 4 level has a good arm. At the Group of 5 level, if they had their own Heisman, he could push for it. He went down and played a year before he got to BYU, played JUCO ball. He threw for over 4,500 yards. I am not comparing G5 ball to JUCO ball. That would be an insult the likes of which I would never utter. I just would not. But this is a guy who can sling it around the yard a little bit. And I'm going to go out on a wild limb and say G5 defenses are not as tough as the Big 12, which might not be as tough as the SEC. Certainly be a step down from all that. I think if there's a G5 contender, I don't know if Tulane would go out and take a shot here, but if there's somebody like that wants to go and get a guy who they can win football games with, boy, he could certainly be that sort of option. So that's where I suspect, without having a particular school in mind, I bet if he does wind up finding a destination to be a starting quarterback this fall, I bet it's at a Group of 5 school. I now need to push back on some of the ridiculousness that has, if you go to that wonderful search engine that we all use, Google, they call it, and you pull up a host of articles looking at where Jake Retzlaff could wind up, you will see, I don't want to be mean, there's plenty of mean, toxic people out there, so I'm going to use the nicest word that I can. You will see some of the dumbest takes imaginable about where Retzlaff could wind up. I've seen Georgia on it. Oh, man. I guess Georgia's not that concerned with off-field issues. We've seen that materialize over the last several years. No. Just no. Jake Retzlaff in the SEC, kind of a game manager sort of guy. Nothing wrong with that. You win 10 games max, 6 games minimum with Jake Retzlaff as your quarterback in the SEC. Nothing wrong with that. Plenty of programs to take it. I've seen Alabama get thrown out. Just stop. Just stop it. He's not walking into... If Ty Simpson is not the starter at Alabama, they're not going to the portal for a guy. They'll develop a young guy. And that'll help get Kalen DeBoer an extra year. And I don't think DeBoer's on the hot seat this year. I think they're going to win at least 9, probably 10 or 11 games this season and be okay. Presuming Ty Simpson's good. Maybe he's not. I don't know. We haven't seen a whole heck of a lot of him so far. The little we have seen, not overly impressive, but he's a former 5-star recruit. But you've got Austin Mack on that roster. You've got Keelan Russell on that roster. No. Just no. They're not void of quarterback talent. They're void of experience. Sure. This is Alabama. That's not going to happen. Okay. The other one, and let me stress that this is my number one. In no world will this take place. Jake Retzlaff to Stanford is the silliest idea imaginable. This is a school. Notice I didn't say a football program. This is a school highly concerned with the image that it projects, the type of men and women that its sports programs produce, and the pride it takes in being a premier institution in the United States. You add on top of that, Andrew Luck just got there and is putting his paw prints all over that program, rightfully so, actually letting him use the transfer portal, showing up at practice. I think he's got some wisdom on the sport. There is no way that those two things can be overcome to add a quarterback who's got an off-the-field tag that comes with him. No shot. I have seen, you can find that in just about every list of potential transfer destinations. I will have to eat so much crow if he winds up going there. I tell you what, if I could create a line at Spencer's Sportsbook, no, Jake Retzlaff won't transfer to Stanford is minus 10,000. That is, I don't know where these ideas come from. I don't know who put these sorts of lists together. You can find several. I mean, boy. While we're on the subject, briefly, of Group of 5 schools, then I'll get to my Big Ten preseason power rankings. I've seen UNLV thrown out there. Again, not a need. They brought in Anthony Colandrea from Virginia. They brought in Alex Orji from Michigan. They got plenty of options. UNLV does not need to go out and get Jake Retzlaff. The Stanford one, man. You're just not paying attention if you think Stanford. Alabama's more likely than Stanford. That doesn't make Alabama likely. Because Stanford, to me, 0. I think that is a 0% chance. And they're like top 3 on everybody's list out there. And I can't understand it. I really can't. So shut that notion down. I don't think he winds up at Tennessee. I think you'll see him playing for a Group of 5 school this year. And hey, you never know. Maybe he'll lead him to the playoff. Jake Retzlaff to Stanford. Are you out of your minds? Are you out of your minds? Anyway, you might think I'm out of my mind, but we're going to do a third segment today anyway. All right, you're going to think I'm crazy? I'm nothing if not consistent. Here are my Big Ten power rankings. Starting at the top was number 1. I'm going to do it. I do this with Texas Tech. I might have been the guy in years past. If my career turned out differently, that would have bought into Texas A&M a time or two. I never did, but you're just going to have to take my word for that. That is a college football fan. I never bought into Texas A&M. I'm putting Penn State number 1 in my Big Ten preseason power rankings. Yes, it's true. You know why? Because if I give you a blind resume and didn't give you brands, logos, school colors, or head coaches, even if I gave you head coaches, you would not, on paper, blind resume, take Ohio State or Oregon over Penn State. You just wouldn't. You just wouldn't. You might take the coaches. That's about the only thing. I'm not saying it's irrelevant. I'm just saying James Franklin, on paper, is working with a better roster situation than Ohio State or Oregon this year. It doesn't mean that he won't go out and lose to both of those teams. I don't think he will. I think it's more likely he beats both of them than loses to both of them. And if he splits, is anyone going to look at James Franklin and call him a bum? I don't know. I'm sure we'll find a way. But Penn State is number 1 in my preseason power rankings. It's not as if they were blown out by Ohio State last year. They just couldn't score inside the 5. Turns out a lot of people can't score against Ohio State inside the 5-yard line. But that was a close competitive game with the eventual national champions. Penn State has more of that team back than Ohio State. So yes, I ranked the Nittany Lions going into the year ahead of Ohio State. Who's number 2? Why? Because Ryan Day deserves that sort of respect. Look at his Big Ten record. Look at the national championship he just won. He's replacing a lot. They have the 2 best players in college football. They should be good along the offensive line. They're going to replace some talent on the defensive line. I loved the Bo Atkinson addition in the transfer portal from North Carolina. That is a sneaky nice pickup. They lose a couple of coordinators. They bring in a couple of, they promote Brian Hartline to be the OC, and they bring in Matt Patricia to be the defense coordinator. I don't know if I'm crazy about that. I know I like Jim Knowles more, who's now at Penn State. Another reason that Penn State or Ohio State here. So, yeah, I'm giving Ohio State benefit of the doubt there at number 2. And I'm giving Oregon some benefit of the doubt at number 3. They just won the Big Ten. Yeah, they got their doors blown off by Ohio State. That's why I have them ranked behind, because Ryan Day, better coach than Dan Lanning at this point in time. They play a close game on Dan Lanning's field that's 50-50, go either way. The Ducks win. They go in a neutral field, and Ryan Day ran them out of the stadium. So, yeah, Ryan Day, pretty good. Remember, he should have been fired, according to plenty of Ohio State fans after that Michigan loss and during the season. Okay, anyway. So Oregon, number 3. Number 4, Illinois. Joel Klatt recently ranked them as the team most likely to make the college football playoff for the first time. That's a good take. Illinois' schedule works out. They don't have several high-profile opponents, such as Oregon or Penn State, on the schedule. They have Ohio State at home. They have USC at home. They have to play Indiana early in the year. Several marquee games. Illinois has most of their team back from last year. Luke Altmaier, Brett Bielema at quarterback, of course. Brett Bielema has established a real identity with this Illinois football program, and it came to fruition last year. And South Carolina was everybody's playoff darling. They went and at full strength played Illinois in a bowl game. And the Illini traveled a lot more, and Illinois won the game. Went 10-3. It was pretty good. Pretty good. First time since the 2000s, Illinois had a 10-win season. That's not nothing. So, they're at number 4. Indiana, number 5. Michigan, number 6. Now, I went back and forth on Michigan. Indiana, I think, is pretty clear-cut. They're going to pull back from last year. They'll still be good because Cignetti is a wizard of a head coach. I mean, that dude's awesome. I think Fernando Mendoza is good. I don't know if he's as good as Curtis Rourke, but we'll find out how good that Cignetti system is. I put Indiana ahead of Michigan because Michigan's probably starting Bryce Underwood at quarterback. Now, by the end of the year, could be really good. At the start of the year, he might not be really good. Why? Because he's a true freshman. Now, maybe he comes guns blazing out of the gate. Not like he has to do as much. You know, Dylan Raiola had success in Nebraska last year. Cornhuskers went 6-6, won a bowl game 7-6. I think Michigan's a little bit better than that. They lost a lot on defense, but they also bring back plenty of talent. I think their running game is going to be really good. I love the Haynes addition at running back from Alabama. Love that addition for the Wolverines. But I'm putting them behind Indiana just because I do trust Indiana's quarterback situation a little bit more. Up next is Iowa. Now, this is very program-based because Iowa is the butt of plenty of jokes. Iowa is also one of the most consistently steady programs in the country. Their offense took a big step forward last year. Mark Gronowski comes over from South Dakota State to be their quarterback, and maybe Iowa's just a very high-floor program. And a sneakily high-floor program is who I have right above them. That's Minnesota. Minnesota last year has Darius Taylor back at running back, who Phil Steele put on his preseason Big Ten all-fourth team at running back. I'm not okay with it. I'm not okay. I think Mekhi Hughes at Oregon could be really good. I think Jonah Coleman at Washington is really good. I think Justice Haynes can thrive at Michigan. Darius Taylor, fourth team? Come on. Come on, Phil. And I'm not talking about Phil Dunphy here. Come on, Phil. Let's be better at that. Darius Taylor. Going to be a really nice pickup for somebody in the third round of the NFL draft next year. But I have Minnesota right above USC. Why? Because they beat USC last year. This is close. The second tier, I'd put this in 3 tiers. Top tier, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan. Next tier, Iowa, Minnesota, USC, Washington, Nebraska, Michigan State. Okay. The Michigan State has more to prove, I think, than those other programs. Washington kind of does too. I have more faith in Washington than Michigan State this year. But you could easily flip-flop these teams, put them in different orders, and I wouldn't have a huge pushback there. Nebraska could be low on this list. Nebraska could be overrated because, you know, it's Nebraska. But, hey, Matt Rule is historically a really good coach, and he's got a really talented quarterback that's coming back for a second season. I could put Nebraska higher on this list. I like Jed Fish. I like DeMond Williams. I think Lincoln Riley's finally got a good defensive coordinator. I think the offense bounces back. All of these options, I think, are very interchangeable because I do think there's a gap. I think Jonathan Smith will get Michigan State moving forward as long as Aiden Childs protects the ball for the Spartans here in 2025. I do draw a bit of a line, not a huge line, but a bit of a line before I go to the next tier there. I've got Wisconsin below Michigan State. Wisconsin could be a riser or Luke Fickell could be done. Those are really the only options. If Luke Fickell doesn't pull Wisconsin out of Spencer McLaughlin's power rankings of the Big Ten, he's probably going to be looking for a new job, and he'll probably find one. He's got a really strong track record, but it has not gone as it was supposed to when he was brought over from Cincinnati. Right behind him, UCLA. Now, UCLA fans know, if they win 7 or more games this year, I will spend my own money, buy a Nico Iamaleava UCLA jersey, and wear it on the show every day for a week. That is a thing that will happen. If UCLA does, I don't think they're going to, but they played good ball at the end of the year. So I've got to put them over Rutgers. They won the head-to-head, and I think Nico's an upgraded quarterback from what they had last year. Then Northwestern, Maryland, and Purdue. Quite frankly, any one of those teams could finish last. Northwestern, Maryland, Purdue. Rutgers, again, I want to like them more. I'm just kind of like, hey, it's okay. Maybe. Like Shiano's fine. They went 7-6 last year. They're fine. They might be the best, number 18, 17, 15 team power rated in the conference this year. They could be a little higher. But do I really feel like they're a tier 2 program? No, they had a beneficial schedule last year and still managed to only go 6-6. So just to wrap up, Big Ten power rankings. Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Iowa, Minnesota, USC, Washington, Nebraska, Michigan State, Wisconsin, UCLA, Rutgers, Northwestern, Maryland, and Purdue. You may have thoughts on the matter. Feel free to send them to my way. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.